Single dad's desperate text for baby formula revealed stunning connection with a millionaire CEO. Mike sat in his dimly lit kitchen, the hum of the fridge blending with the distant chorus of crickets outside. He glanced at the last can of baby formula, its yellow label mockingly bright against the dull backdrop of his worn table. The pit in his stomach twisted tighter, reminiscent of grease stains on his mechanic's hands. Even at 35, he felt like he was spinning plates, 2 jobs, a baby, and a mountain of responsibilities. The weight of it all bore down on him, and for the first time since Lily was born, he felt utterly helpless. He hesitated, fingers hovering over his phone. A quick search for local food banks yielded nothing but disappointment. Who was he kidding? Instead of reaching out for help, Mike had always prided himself on being the one who kept things together, the one who provided. But now, with his salary stretching thinner than his patience, he needed to face the reality that he couldn't do this alone anymore. Beneath his exterior, anxiety seeped through every crack. What would it mean to ask for a favor? Deep down, a voice reminded him of every burden he bore, every late-night shift, every callous joke about single fathers, every whisper of judgment gathering like storm clouds overhead. Taking a deep breath, he quickly typed a message to the local grocery store owner, a good-hearted man named Charlie. The text was desperate, bleeding with vulnerability, a plea hidden beneath layers of pride. "Hey Charlie, I'm running low on baby formula. Would you be willing to help me out just this once?" His heart raced as he hit send, immediately regretting it. Did this signal defeat? Was he just perpetuating the very stereotypes he fought against? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Across town, Jordan, now a millionaire tech entrepreneur, sipped his coffee in a cozy cafe stained with nostalgia. When his phone buzzed, he opened the message, his interest piqued. The raw plea hit him hard, dragging him back to a childhood spent in a low-income house just like Mike's. He held the phone tighter. This was someone who needed help, but he also felt a pull of curiosity. Who was Mike? Was he another father just trying to survive, like Jordan had done so many years ago? As Mike headed out, the bustling streets of Maplewood wrapped around him like a tight corset. People glanced at him, their expressions unreadable. Maybe they thought he was lazy, careless. Maybe they looked down on him for not keeping up appearances. Anxiety gnawed at him, pulling taut the wires of his emotions. The whispers wouldn't stop. The fear of being seen as a failure loomed larger with every step. Arriving at the cafe, he felt the air thicken, anticipation mingling with dread. As he spotted Jordan, something flickered, a connection sparking amidst their shared struggles. But as they talked, laughter soon faded into a gnawing silence. The troubling thoughts surged back, suffocating joy in a vice grip. The idea of accepting help tortured him. Would he be that man? Would he become the stereotype he fought against? Here, in a room filled with memories of childhood dreams, Mike grappled with everything he feared. The judgments, the shame, and the precarious balance of pride and desperation. Would he remain silent, adjusting to the narrative others had created, or would he risk everything by siding with his truth? The moment hung in the air like a fragile thread, pulling him closer to the edge just as the shadows around him deepened. Fear tangled with hope, leaving Mike in a spiraling vortex of uncertainty. Would he dare to stand up and claim the support he desperately needed, or would he allow the weight of society's expectations to crush him? The silence in the cafe wrapped around Mike like a heavy cloak, amplifying his inner turmoil. Jordan's gaze pierced through him, deep and knowing, and for a fleeting moment Mike felt exposed. Would this charismatic entrepreneur understand the depths of a man's struggle to protect his pride while battling the relentless tide of responsibility? "I received your message," Jordan finally said, his voice steady, though it held an undertone of empathy. "I get it, really. I grew up in a tough environment too." His admission hung palpably in the air, shifting the atmosphere as if the walls had inched closer to witness this fragile moment of honesty. Mike forced a smile, but it fell flat. He started, but the words choked him. Saying them would mean acknowledging defeat, an admission he wasn't ready to make. How could he ask for help from someone who had climbed so high from the depths he was now struggling in? "Look," Jordan pressed gently, "I don't know your story fully, but I know what it's like to feel isolated and overwhelmed." His tone didn't sound patronizing. It resonated with an authenticity that Mike's heart raced. "Let me help." For the first time, the prospect of accepting assistance stirred something within Mike, a flicker of possibility. But could he shake off the stigma of accepting charity? His hands trembled slightly around his coffee cup. He looked down, watching the steam curl up like his hopes. "I can't," he whispered, shaking his head slowly. "I don't want to be a burden. That's not who I am." Jordan leaned forward, determination in his eyes. "This isn't about burdening someone else.
It's about survival. You're not alone in this, Mike. You have a child depending on you. Anything I can do to help you be the dad you want to be, that's what matters." A wave of warmth seeped into Mike's chest, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years, a breath above water after long submersion. But with it came the nagging voice of judgment that never ceased. He fought against it, wrestling with his pride and his instinct to retreat. Accepting help began as a whisper in the back of his mind, but it was gaining volume, challenging the self-imposed limitations he'd clung to. "Okay," he murmured, finally meeting Jordan's gaze full on. "Maybe I could use some help." Their hands met briefly across the table, a pact corded by shared experience and newfound hope. In choosing to step into vulnerability, Mike felt an infinitesimal shift within himself. A possibility expanded that perhaps he wasn't simply a single father bound by fate and circumstance. There was power in choosing connection over isolation. The conversation quickly morphed, transitioning from small talk to discussing strategies. Jordan shared insights about local resources that Mike had never considered, community programs, networking opportunities, and even potential job leads. Each piece of advice seeded a cautious optimism. A voice echoed in Mike's mind, daring him to believe in himself and the potential bonds he could forge with others. As the new ideas coalesced, something germinated within Mike. Maybe he could find a better job, something that didn't require him to exhaust every ounce of himself just to scrape by. Perhaps, with Jordan's guidance, he could inspire other fathers in similar situations, sharing strategies and fostering a sense of community. Rather than merely accepting aid, he would understand it, study it, and then transform it into empowerment for himself and others. Yet, when they stood to leave, a shadow of doubt flickered in the recesses of Mike's mind. Was he truly ready to change his life? Was asking for help just a pit stop on the road to failure? As they stepped into the bustling street, Mike caught his reflection in a shop window. Haggard yet resilient. He saw a man not just seeking survival, but potentially capable of thriving. But with that aspiration came fear, the constant need to confront the vulnerabilities that had always silenced him. "Let's meet again next week," Jordan suggested as they walked. "We'll keep building from here." Mike nodded, but an urgency bubbled within him, quicker than thought. What would happen when he faced his coworkers again, re-entering a world he'd kept at arm's length? The moment he realized he had a chance to help others, would it sway his commitment, or would he still cower from potential judgment? With his heart racing and courage inflating, Mike knew he stood on the verge of transformation. He could remain trapped in the cocoon of pride or resist the itch of connection. The decision loomed like a shadow, dark but illuminating. It threatened to pull him into
a desperate reckoning with himself. Could he truly harness this opportunity and pave a way toward the father and man he aspired to be? The journey into the unknown had begun, and he wasn't sure where it would lead. But for the first time in a long while, hope shimmered like a distant beacon. The week that followed transformed into an intricate tapestry of reflection and action for Mike. Every moment was tinged with the bittersweet flavor of anticipation, a mixture of hope and fear. The conversation with Jordan had ignited something dormant within him, a flicker of ambition that he never thought he'd reignite. Yet, the closer the next meeting approached, the more Mike felt his resolve fraying. On Monday, he returned to work, stepping into the office like a wary lion, each person's gaze feeling like a spotlight scrutinizing his every move. The job had become a suffocating weight, the mundane rhythm of tasks only amplifying his doubts. He found himself questioning how he could even contemplate guiding anyone when he felt so lost. As he sat down at his cluttered desk, the cacophony of ringing phones and hurried conversations echoed around him. It was in this chaos that a realization struck him. He had spent too long viewing himself through a distorted lens defined by failure. With Jordan's encouragement echoing in his mind, he took a deep breath and resolved to present a different version of himself, one that was shifting from mere survival to potential growth. That afternoon, Mike made a list. It was a simple cerebral act, but to him, it felt monumental. Under the title Professional Goals, he jotted down edges he wanted to explore, networking opportunities, skill development, and ultimately, paths toward a job that could sustain his family. Each item felt like a small rebellion against his own inertia, a declaration that he was ready to claim ownership of his life. The following days buzzed with activity as Mike sought out resources. He scoured local websites for workshops and networking events. Each click confirmed his resolve, but it also stirred apprehension. How could he walk into a room filled with consummate professionals? Would he fit in, or would his faded jeans and tired demeanor give him away? When Friday rolled around, Mike was acutely aware of the impending meeting with Jordan. That morning was filled with a flurry of doubts. What if he failed to make an impression? What if he wasted his chance to leverage Jordan's knowledge? The gnawing anxiety was palpable. But as he reached the cafe for their rendezvous, Mike steadied himself. If Jordan could rise from his background, why couldn't he? This wasn't simply about asking for help. It was about studying the path that others had traversed and integrating that knowledge into his own journey. When Mike entered, he spotted Jordan, who was already engrossed in conversation with another patron. That same warm, reassuring aura surrounded him. Jordan looked up, waving Mike over with a smile that immediately dissolved much of the tension coiling in Mike's stomach. "Hey, I'm glad you made it," Jordan said, greeting him with a sense of camaraderie that almost felt familiar. "You seem energized. Have you thought more about our previous discussion?" The opening was an opportunity Mike could not squander. "I've been researching workshops and local events," he began, voice steadying with excitement. "I want to grow my network and find ways I can help others too. I think if I share what I learn, I can help other fathers like me." Jordan's expression brightened. "That's fantastic. Do you have a particular type of job in mind?" As the conversation flowed, the fears that had gripped Mike began to subside. He felt the shadows of doubt recede as new visions of empowerment surged forward. He could see a new career path taking shape, not only for him, but also for the people he wished to uplift. Yet, underlying it all was the question that nagged persistently. Was he truly ready to leave behind the identity shaped so long by struggle? Could he embrace this new role without being swallowed by the weight of self-doubt? That evening, as Mike returned home, he found himself staring in the mirror, observing the familiar man who had fought through life's vortex. He wanted to forge a tangible connection between his past and the vision of growth that was unfurling within him. The melding of fear and opportunity danced in his chest. The first impression was only the beginning.
The next meeting loomed with promising landscapes, but Mike understood he needed to confront an old specter, the fear of judgment lurking amongst his coworkers. For tomorrow, he would strive to be more than a silent player in the background. Could he emerge from his shell and act with courage? The next day would reveal the answer, confronting him with a pivotal moment he could no longer avoid. The next morning descended like an impending storm. Mike woke up earlier than usual, driven by an urgency he couldn't entirely articulate. His unsettled mind swirled with thoughts about how he might present himself throughout the day. Today was not simply another Monday at work. It held within it the seeds of transformation. Yet the thought of facing a sea of critical gazes left a bitter taste in his mouth. After dropping off his son at school, he caught himself rehearsing conversations in his mind, pondering how he would engage his coworkers and assert his new goals. Each encounter felt like a delicate dance, one in which he feared missing a step and falling back into the shadows. What did it mean to put himself forth as a candidate for growth while still clinging to the remnants of his past? As Mike entered the office, he forced himself to recall the list he had written. He needed to embody it. Instead of creeping into his cubicle, he stood tall, struggling to project an aura of confidence. The atmosphere buzzed with the usual morning chatter, but today's murmur seemed amplified, and each laugh felt like a cacophony that exposed his insecurities. He made a point to wander toward the break room, where clusters of his colleagues gathered. A strategy was forming in his mind. If he could weave himself into these conversations, even briefly, it could begin to establish a foothold in this landscape where he felt like an outsider. "Hey Mike, you ready for the quarterly report meeting?" Sarah, his office manager, called to him from a little huddle. Her tone was cheerful, but he detected an undertone of uncertainty. The ice was thin. "Actually, I was hoping to share some insights today," he replied. Surprised by his own audacity, he pressed on. "I've put together some ideas on team engagement. I think we could all benefit from reevaluating how we interact during these meetings." Her raised eyebrows spoke volumes, but she encouraged, "That sounds great. We can definitely use fresh perspectives." The moment was electric, yet a wave of self-doubt crashed over him. What if his contributions were not well received? As he navigated through the morning, he felt the familiar pangs of insecurity clashing with his newfound determination. Each awkward silence felt like a mountain, yet he climbed, finding small victories in bits and pieces of conversation. During lunch, he took a brave step and connected with Jacob, a colleague he had always seen as unapproachable. "I noticed you have a strong network in our industry," Mike began tentatively. "How do you cultivate those relationships?" To his surprise, Jacob opened up, sharing his approach to networking and vulnerability. This in-depth discussion shifted the dynamic, and Mike was left feeling empowered. He was not just taking ideas, he was building connections, two sides of the same coin that had felt out of his reach before. With each interaction, he felt a knot inside him loosening, even if just slightly. Yet underlying the achievement was still the insistent question: what if he attached too much value to these small wins? What if today was just a blip on a radar that ultimately pointed towards his failures? As he stayed late to prepare his report, his phone buzzed with a message from Jordan. "I'm excited to hear about your progress. Let's chat soon." A fresh wave of reassurance washed over Mike. He wasn't alone in this journey. Others saw his potential too. That night, he collapsed on the couch, mentally and physically drained, but somehow lighter. At the core of his exhaustion was a realization: his insights and aspirations had merit. Yet lurking beneath the surface was a voice that whispered of greater challenges ahead. The next opportunity loomed, and with it the real test. Could he maintain the momentum? The hourglass of possibility shaded his horizon, and with it the understanding that the world outside was unfolding with new doors to open. Little did he know, that very next day would present him with an unexpected twist, an opportunity to confront another layer of his fear head-on. How could he harness the progress he had made without succumbing to the doubts that still lingered? The following morning, Mike awoke to the sound of rain tapping against his window, a gentle reminder that change often comes in waves. The tension that had gripped him the day before had receded slightly, leaving behind a mixture of hope and anxiety. It was a new day, and he felt the urge to build on the small victories he had accumulated. After another morning drop-off, Mike took a moment in his car, staring blankly into the rearview mirror. Today, he resolved to push further out of his comfort zone. As he drove to work, he rehearsed a bold approach in his mind. Attending the quarterly report meeting would no longer be a passive experience. He would actively lead it. A new strategy was forming. He wouldn't just present ideas, but challenge assumptions that had lingered in the office for too long. Stepping into the building, he took a deep breath and steadied himself. This day would be different. He would align his thoughts with his aspirations and not let old doubts weigh him down. In the break room, he spotted Sarah again, the tension between them giving way to familiarity. "I've been thinking about our meeting strategy," he said, his voice firmer than it had been before. "I have a few ideas that could improve engagement and participation." Sarah chuckled, her nerves easing. "Great, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have in mind." For the first time, her smile felt genuine, and Mike felt as if he were stepping into a role that was rightfully his. As the meeting began, Mike's heart raced, more from excitement than fear. He stood up to present, and as he laid out his ideas, he could feel the room shift. Slowly, faces turned from indifference to interest. When he suggested interactive sessions instead of traditional reports, he was met with nods, a surreal but exhilarating response. "Those are fresh perspectives," Jordan piped up, a look of approval crossing his face. "We could really use a shake-up in how we approach these meetings." The meeting ended with an encouraging buzz, and Mike walked away feeling as if the chains of self-doubt had been shattered. Yet, beneath the surface of gratification, a question lingered. Was this a genuine turning point, or merely an anomaly? The real breakthrough came unexpectedly when Mike, still floating on clouds of newfound confidence, decided to approach Jacob once more. This time, he was bolder. "I want to learn more about your networking techniques, but I also have insights I think you'd find valuable," he began, hoping to forge a mentorship. To his surprise, Jacob agreed. "Let's grab coffee this week. I'm curious about those insights." Mike's heart raced. The prospect of collaboration sparked a flame within him. Later that afternoon, an unexpected email came through, confirming a meeting with the upper management team, a rare opportunity for someone in Mike's position. A wave of unease washed over him. This was the big stage, and all his gains were about to be tested. He hesitated as he considered his response. Should he present his bold ideas without reservation, or hold back, fearing rejection? Stability clashed with ambition in his mind, and each thought felt heavier than the last. His phone buzzed again, this time a message from Sarah. "I just wanted to thank you for your insights. They were refreshing. Let's keep the momentum going." A surge of encouragement flooded Mike's senses, battling against the voices of doubt. As evening approached and he reflected on the day, he grasped an important truth. How he perceived his own story directly shaped how others regarded him. He could throw off the cloak of mediocrity and forge ahead on his path, but it would require him to persevere through the inevitable storms that lay ahead. What concealed knowledge or talent might he unearth in the escalating tension of the meeting? As he mulled this over, a foreboding sense lingered in the air. The question remained, was he truly ready to embrace the deeper challenges that awaited? The next opportunity loomed closer, and the stakes had never felt so real. Would he seize it, or would he falter? As the day of the upper management meeting approached, a sense of urgency settled within Mike. Each tick of the clock felt amplified, as if time itself conspired to heighten his anxiety. He found himself staring at the presentation slides on his screen, a jumble of bold ideas and numbers that seemed to spiral out of control. Each suggestion he had crafted was brilliant in his mind, yet he felt the weight of doubt creeping back in, threatening to smother his newly found confidence. What if they didn't understand his suggestions? What if they dismissed his insights because of his position? He had never sat at the table with upper management before. This was uncharted territory, a precipice from which he could either soar or plummet.
Mike traded hours of sleep for endless overthinking, his mind racing with what-ifs and hypothetical scenarios that painted a multitude of bleak outcomes. Before the meeting, he resolved to reach out to Jacob for advice on how to navigate the upper management dynamics. As they sipped coffee in a nearby cafe, Jacob's calm demeanor contrasted with Mike's trepidation. "Just be yourself, Mike. They picked you for a reason," Jacob reassured him, leaning back in his chair. "You have insights that they need, and it's your time to shine." "But what if I get turned down?" Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if they reject me outright?" Jacob interlocked his fingers, earnestly meeting Mike's gaze. "Rejection teaches you resilience. It's not about whether they accept your ideas, it's about how you respond to it. Each no is a step toward a yes. You need to focus on what you can control, like delivering your message with conviction." Those words cored within Mike, momentarily obliterating his fear. He returned to his desk with a newfound determination, studying his slides not just for information, but for points that resonated with his own professional journey and personal experiences. He realized he wasn't merely presenting ideas, he was sharing a part of himself, his values, his vision for change, and his desire to grow. The morning of the meeting dawned, rain replaced by a tentative sun, reflecting the inner light he hoped to project. As he entered the conference room, Mike noted the nervous chatter of his colleagues, the tension palpable in the air. His heart speeded up, but this time it was not out of fear. As the meeting commenced, he took a deep breath, recalling Jacob's advice. When it was his turn to speak, he glanced around the room, preparing for the onslaught of skepticism he feared. Instead, he focused on his central message, an invitation for collaboration rather than presentation. He began to articulate his ideas with fervor, weaving in personal anecdotes about his quest for innovative engagement methods rather than monotonous status updates. Slowly, he noticed nodding heads and engaged smiles among upper management, signals of their surprise at the depths of his insights. Then, unexpectedly, as he transitioned to the final point of his proposal, Jordan interjected with a pointed question about his personal experience and emotional investment in the initiative. The room silenced as Mike realized this moment was a test, not only of his ideas, but also of his ability to connect. Drawing in a deep breath, he responded not with strategies or metrics, but with a story about his own struggles to connect with others, his alienation as a father, and how transforming relationships fostered professional growth. This confession, raw and vulnerable, struck a powerful note that echoed across the room. "Your personal journey is what makes your perspective valuable," Jordan remarked, nodding thoughtfully, as the reaction around the room shifted from curiosity to respect. Was this the authentic connection he'd sought all along? As the meeting concluded, something vital began to take root in Mike's mind. This wasn't just about career advancement. It was about visibility, vulnerability, and sharing the journey. He had faced a pivotal challenge head-on and emerged not just intact, but empowered. But in the aftermath of this promising shift, a flutter of uncertainty lingered. Had he truly connected, or was this merely a fleeting spark? The implications of his newfound voice, of opening up, sparked both excitement and trepidation within him. What would it mean for future interactions within the company? As he left the meeting room, questions danced in his mind. Could vulnerability truly be a strength in a professional environment, often cloaked in armor? The answer to this mystery lay ahead, waiting to be uncovered. And he knew that the next challenge would soon come knocking, ready to test the newfound resolve he had unearthed. The following week, a palpable change rippled through the office environment. Colleagues who had once avoided eye contact now engaged with Mike more openly, stopping by his desk under the guise of casual conversation. The connection he had forged during the meeting recast his presence in the workplace from invisible to invaluable. Yet, amidst the initial thrill, a shadow lurked in the back of Mike's mind, reminding him that this newfound recognition could evaporate just as quickly as it had arrived. He found himself oscillating between confidence and the trepidation of falling back into obscurity. Every interaction became a test of his resolve. His team began to approach him with ideas, seeking his perspective as if he were the go-to consultant they had never thought to consult before. Yet, rather than feeling elated by the newfound respect, Mike felt pressure mounting to validate their confidence. Determined to navigate this newfound visibility, he scheduled one-on-one catch-ups with his peers. Historically, he'd kept his distance, fearing judgment. So, when Linda from marketing arrived for coffee, Mike focused on maintaining an open dialogue rather than leading the conversation. As they talked, he picked apart the nuances in her phrasing and gestures, which spoke volumes about her own reservations. Listening intently, he learned that she too dreaded public speaking and often battled imposter syndrome. This revelation sparked a realization. Vulnerability wasn't just his own weight to bear. It was a universal thread woven through the fabric of the workplace. If he could help others feel seen in their uncertainties, it would not only strengthen his relationships, but help him solidify his place within the organization. Over the following weeks, Mike found himself championing small initiatives, like hosting casual brainstorming sessions, where team members could share thoughts without the weight of formal presentations. Each gathering felt like a lifeline of sorts, empowering his colleagues to voice their ideas and tap into their own hidden vulnerabilities. As the sessions progressed, he noticed the culture within the team shifting. More ideas flowed, enthusiasm bubbled, and for the first time in a long while, the collective laughter echoed through the office spaces, a stark contrast to the previously sterile atmosphere. But just as the camaraderie built up around him, doubt began to creep back in. Was he overstepping his bounds? Was his new role as the driving force of this culture shift something he was truly equipped for? His question lingered in his mind until an unexpected email landed in his inbox. It came from Jordan, the same executive who had first acknowledged his contributions during the meeting. In a terse but thought-provoking paragraph, Jordan requested a follow-up conversation to discuss potential projects that aligned with Mike's ideas. The message struck him with an acute urgency. This could be his chance to solidify his new position, or a moment where he could face a defining blow to his emerging confidence. As Mike prepared for the conversation, the gravity of the situation weighed heavy. Could he truly harness the power of connection he had forged, not just to further his career, but to influence projects that could impact the organization, company's trajectory? Realizing that this could be yet another opportunity to demonstrate his softer approach in a traditionally rigid environment, he settled on the prospect that vulnerability might not only enhance his role, but also empower him in ways he had yet to discover. As their meeting loomed closer, a newfound intensity surged within him. He would step into this room with the same authenticity that had initially connected him with upper management. The air was thick with potential. What would Jordan reveal? Would he recognize Mike's value beyond his ideas? In the depths of uncertainty and excitement, Mike knew the moment had come to confront the complexities of his professional identity. The next challenge awaited, tinged with both a promise and a peril that would test the foundations he had begun to build. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the weight of expectation prove too much? Sitting in the conference room, Mike could feel the tension knotting his stomach. The polished mahogany table stretched before him, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. He had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his mind, yet nothing could quell the storm of self-doubt raging within. He thought of Linda, of their conversation, the vulnerability shared, and how it had sparked change. But would he be able to replicate that authenticity in front of someone like Jordan? As the door creaked open, Mike's heart raced. Jordan stepped in, a confident smile displaying ease in a typically intimidating setting. The executive's presence was magnetic, a reminder of the difference between their stations. Mike fought against the urge to shrink back, to recede into his shell. "Mike, thanks for making the time today. I've been looking forward to our discussion." Jordan's voice was warm but firm, a stark contrast to the swirling insecurities echoing within Mike. "Of course, Jordan, I appreciate the opportunity." Mike managed to reply, his words feeling inadequate on the tip of his tongue.
They settled into the conversation, and Mike began to present his ideas, thoughts that had emerged from his recent brainstorming sessions with the team. He spoke with cautious enthusiasm, his passion flickering as he detailed how he wanted to fuse creativity with an open dialogue, how to engage every voice in the company. Jordan listened intently, nodding occasionally. As he did so, Mike's confidence began to swell. He leaned into the points that mattered most, the very essence of inclusion, of making every employee feel valued and heard. But just as Mike hit his stride, Jordan interjected. "I can see the value in what you're proposing, yet I can't help but wonder, what if the culture shift you're advocating for is just a camera-worthy moment? How do we ensure this isn't just a passing trend?" Pressure crashed down on Mike, a suffocating weight of expectation. A flash of panic shot through him. Was he being taken seriously, or was he merely a character in Jordan's corporate performance? He stammered, then paused, biting through the instinct to defend his ideas. Instead, he leaned into vulnerability. "I understand your concern," he said earnestly, "but I believe that when we create a safe space for honest dialogue, it cultivates trust. It's not just about surface-level changes. This could redefine our entire work ethic. It's how collaboration emerges from the depths of shared fears." Jordan raised an eyebrow as if gauging the sincerity of Mike's commitment. An uncomfortable silence settled between them, but within that stillness, Mike discovered clarity. He realized that this was more than just a pitch. It was about standing by his convictions. "Let's be real," Mike continued, igniting his zeal further. "We've both felt lost in this environment at times, haven't we? It's not just about who's at the top. It's how we connect with each other, regardless of our titles. I've been that person who hesitated to speak up and felt on the brink of invisibility. And what I'm proposing is a route away from that, towards a space where everyone's voice can make a difference." Jordan's expression softened, seemingly grasping the authenticity that had begun to blossom. "You're right, Mike. The comfortable absence of engagement always favors the status quo. Perhaps we could pilot your ideas as a project moving forward." Mike's pulse surged with adrenaline. Was he actually getting through? Could this be a breakthrough not just for him, but for the entire organization? "Let's put together a plan," Mike enthused, his confidence swelling anew. This was more than mere recognition. It was a chance to build momentum that could ripple through the company culture. He felt the tides of self-doubt receding, replaced by a spirit of collaboration and shared purpose. As their conversation shifted toward logistics, Mike felt invigorated. Yet beneath the excitement brewed another concern: how to navigate this newfound influence while maintaining his authenticity. Would he be able to uphold the ethos he had begun to cultivate, or would ambition overshadow his intentions? The discussions continued, but Mike's mind raced. He sensed the challenge evolving, one where personal integrity would be just as crucial as professional success. Would he be able to embrace the duality of leadership without sacrificing his principles? As they concluded their meeting, Mike felt empowered, yet apprehensive. This was not merely a career-defining moment, it was the onset of a new chapter in his professional journey. The revelation flickered like a beacon. The path toward leadership demanded courage not only to push forward, but to remain true to oneself. Jordan extended his hand, sealing their new partnership. But Mike couldn't shake the creeping anxiety. The moment of truth was on the horizon, and his commitment would soon be tested in ways he had yet to comprehend. Would he emerge unscathed, or would this newfound responsibility fracture the very connections he was striding to foster? The days following the meeting with Jordan shifted Mike into a new realm of responsibility. With every passing hour, his enthusiasm for the project intertwined with an undercurrent of fear. He started drafting plans late into the night, driven not only by the desire to implement his vision, but also by the fear of failing in this unexpected role. The office environment felt charged. As Mike walked through the halls, he recognized covert glances from colleagues. Whispers permeated the air. Some were supportive, but others harbored skepticism. The specter of vulnerability haunted him. Was he really cut out for this?
As he delved deeper into the logistics, Mike found himself surrounded by a growing team who shared his vision. They were young, eager, and full of ideas, mirroring the energy he had once felt when starting out. But as they collaborated on the initiative, doubts began creeping back in. Were they investing effort in the right direction, or was he merely redirecting their ambition to appease a fleeting notion of workplace harmony? He spent evenings losing himself in reports and research, meticulously piecing together a proposal that resonated with authenticity. Each bullet point highlighted the pillars of communication and inclusion he sought to institutionalize. But when he considered presenting this to Jordan as well as the broader company, he was haunted by interwoven thoughts of failure and inadequacy. What if this was just a mirage, a suggestion doomed to evaporate under scrutiny? Then, in a moment of clarity, he decided to gather the team for a brainstorming session, a chance to co-create rather than dictate. Sitting around the conference table, he looked into the eager faces of his colleagues. Their hopes echoed his own. They were waiting, yearning for a leader to guide them, not a commander, but a partner in exploration. "Let's tear down the barriers," he proposed, inviting them into a dialogue that felt alive. As voices began to flow, ideas morphed and flourished. The conversation transformed from tentative exchanges to passionate debates. Mike felt an empowering surge, the same energy he had once known during his initial spark of leadership. However, amid this exhilaration surfaced a nagging concern. Mike caught a fleeting glimpse of a possible fracture. A rapid ascent could lead to a slippery slope. What if his authenticity began to fray under the pressure of expectations? He had vowed to create an honest space. Would he be able to uphold it against the minutiae of corporate politics? Days turned into weeks, and as the project began to take shape, he faced a defining moment. Jordan requested a mid-project update, asking him to present the burgeoning ideas to the executive board. In quiet moments leading up to the presentation, anxiety would strike him like lightning. Was he prepared to face the scrutiny of the very individuals who could either awaken or sabotage his vision? As the meeting day arrived, Mike's heart drummed in his chest. Walking into the opulent boardroom starkly contrasted with the raw energy of his brainstorming sessions. The polished veneer of the executives loomed intimidatingly. When it was his turn to speak, he felt the walls closing in around him and the whispering voice of doubt growing louder. "Remember, you must stay true."
Grasping the notes that had become lifelines over the last few weeks. Engulfed in the intensity of the moment, Mike took a deep breath and leaned into the vulnerability he had once embraced in front of Jordan. He spoke not just of his vision, but of the collective journey of discovery that had unfolded within the team. As he painted a picture of a company thriving through empathy and engagement, he caught sight of Jordan nodding in approval. The connection lit a flicker of expectancy in him, but doubt still shadowed each word. Would his authenticity transcend the polished facades around him, or would it be reduced to just another presentation in a long line? As the final question fell from the executive's lips and the room fell silent, he realized success hinged not only on his performance in that moment, but on the foundational integrity he had built alongside his team. The clarity he once felt now crystallized into focus. His greatest challenge was ahead. Would he maintain the passionate ethos that had lit this project's flame, or would he yield to the demand for results over genuine connection? The moment of truth had arrived, and with it, the grip of anxiety tightened anew. The crunch of footsteps filled the conference room as Mike prepared to present to Jordan and the executive team. The polished faces across the table loomed large, each one a reminder of the disparate world he had only recently dared to step into. But beneath the initial wave of apprehension, an ember of resolve sparked within him. This was not merely a presentation. This was an opportunity to coalesce the ideals he had nurtured in his heart with the practical needs of the company. Taking a steadying breath, Mike unfolded his notes, each word transformed into a testament of his journey, not only from isolation, but into a vibrant canvas where vulnerability became a source of strength. He began speaking about the ongoing project, framing it as a communal exploration into workplace culture that necessitated everyone's active participation. Each idea flowed from his lips with newfound clarity, addressing the executives not as authority figures rimmed with judgment, but as potential allies navigating the same challenges of human connection. Change starts from within, Mike articulated, sensing the shift in tone as several faces softened in recognition. By fostering an environment that encourages open dialogue and shared experiences, we can redefine success together. This initiative isn't just top-down. It's about creating pathways for everyone to contribute their unique perspectives, and in doing so, reinforce our collective identity. As he spoke, passages of his own experiences intricately stitched themselves into his narrative. Memories of refusal, frustration, and the fear of loneliness echoed as he resolutely defined the necessity of inclusivity in a realm that thrived on competition. He felt the weight of judgment begin to lift, replaced by a palpable energy as the executives leaned in. Curiosity piqued. When the conversation naturally shifted toward the next steps, Mike found himself fielding questions with unexpected confidence. They weren't mere inquiries now. They transformed into a collaborative exploration, a discussion where his insights mingled fluidly with their feedback. Each nod, each thoughtful expression reinforced the transformative power he had tapped into, sparking a realization that this was not just about acceptance, but about meaningful partnership. Finally, as the presentation wound down, an unexpected question arose from Jordan, pushing the conversation into a more profound realm. Mike, how do you propose we protect this culture of openness against the struggles of office politics that might threaten it? The moment hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. Mike felt the urge to retreat into the familiar shadows of doubt, but he stood firm, recalling how far he had come. Vulnerability cannot exist in a void. It thrives within a modeled framework. If we, as leaders, exemplify openness and reconciliation, it sets the tone for the entire organization. We must establish regular check-ins, promote leadership training on empathetic engagement, and prioritize accountability. Silence wrapped around the room, the type rich with contemplation. He gazed around, meeting the eyes of those who had once seemed impossibly distant. Now, their expressions glimmered with intrigue. A serendipitous understanding formed, a bond shaped by shared experiences and mutual aspirations. The meeting concluded, but the undercurrents of connection promised something greater. In those moments of dialogue, Mike discovered his own strength, a solid confidence rooted in a profound sense of purpose. He was no longer just a participant. He had witnesses sculpting his story. He had become a beacon not just for himself, but for others seeking solace in the complex web of professional identity. In the days that followed, living with this engaging authenticity permeated his life. Conversations flourished, and the small initiatives he had sparked led to a blossoming culture of sharing and trust within the office. Colleagues embraced involvement in ways he had only envisioned before, demonstrating the mutual investment in their workplace as a shared home of vulnerability and effectiveness. But even amidst this shared success, a reflection sobered Mike. This sense of fulfillment ran deeper than the reactions of others. He had embraced and conquered insecurities that had dogged him for years. The narrative he once feared was shifting, not defined by judgment, but reframed in growth, in engagement, in individual demands being met with collective support. As he sat at his desk one afternoon, flipping through papers of project notes, he glanced out the window and saw students walking by, perhaps reflecting on their own challenges. He identified with them, but now the shadows of self-doubt were merely whispers, behind him, not ahead. His phone buzzed, and it was a message from Jordan. Looking forward to our follow-up meeting. Your insights are proving valuable. With that, a swell of pride surged through Mike.
He wasn't just glimpsing success, he was stepping into it, arm in arm with those who were vested alongside him. Mike had transformed, not only that pivotal moment at the conference room table, but through these experiences, he had come to relish in the complexities of authenticity. This was not a solitary victory. It was a fruit of courage and connection that would continue to pave the way. The man who once faltered in the shadows now inhabited the light, a dynamic force in his career and a devoted dad realizing the weight of his role. To the viewers, the journey was far from static. In every moment shared and impact made, there was an unmistakable truth. Vulnerability and connection could propel anyone to a place of profound achievement. If you believe in the power of transformation, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm in our pursuit of more narratives that resonate. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see what's possible when we embrace our struggles and thrive. Don't wait even one more second to support the essential journey of personal overcoming stories. Your engagement matters.